Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome to my garden. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, in the backyard garden right now. I also grow and garden in my front yard. My garden zone is 6. My average first frost date is November the 1st, which is pretty accurate. I'm growing vegetables, herbs, some flowers, and strawberries. That's the only fruit I'm growing. This month is special though because every day this month I'm taking the camera out into the garden and sharing some of those things I'm growing, some of the things I'm struggling with, some of the things that I'm planting, and all of the things in between. So welcome to day 10. If you have been following the vlogs, thank you. Know that today we'll take a look at some of the things that you haven't seen. Then we'll get some updates on some of the things that we've been working on over the last week and a half or so. All right. Last housekeeping item. Big thank yous to those who like, watch, comment, share, and subscribe to Be Better Garden. I appreciate y'all. If you haven't subscribed already, consider it. There's a button below. And let's dig in. Okie doke. So our pineapple tomato plant is huge. The space that I planted it in is just about 2 feet wide by 4 feet long, 4-ish feet. And it is starting to put on the huge tomatoes that it's known for, or at least in my garden. Super pleased. I have one that's ripe down below that I'll pick. And I have another pineapple plant in the front yard in the first large bed along the sidewalk. And I haven't seen tomatoes that size yet from that plant. And I think it's just it has less competition in the soil since there are many plants up there and only one tomato plant back here. My sweet potatoes. We're at the point in the year where my grandmother would say it's time to let the garden run wild. And mostly she meant weeds, which I have plenty of too. They grow in between my neighbor's fence and the cage baby. We'll pick some celery throughout the next several weeks. It is definitely ready. My plan was to do some juicing, cucumbers, celery. I picked up some apples, so I need to pull my juicer out. Another kind of cutout space that I have here where a tomato plant's growing, and then I have a pepper plant, which could use a little support. But these are the black strawberry tomatoes. And so they're putting on some color back there. I think they're supposed to get a little bit darker though. So this is another plant super pleased with, the Megatron jalapenos. I just wish I would have planted out like even half of the ones that I started. I think I only have like maybe 2 plants in the garden, 3 maybe. Cucumbers are starting to suffer a bit, but they're still putting on some new flowers, so hoping I can get another flush of cucumbers from them. Lego garden bed. This one's been a little bit of a challenge this year, so still love the height of the bed, love the idea of being able to walk up to it. It's 32 inches tall, and we're a year old now. So I used a take on the hugel culture method where I had basically a bunch of filler material. Started off with like branches from trees, stalks from sunflowers, cardboard, like all of that is in the bottom layer. And then I had shredded leaves followed by spent potting soil, which is just potting soil that I've used over the years. And I dumped that in as the next layer. And then I put good garden soil in and compost. So last year, after it was initially set up, the soil line dropped after a couple of weeks, which we expected. But when I came back in to plant last summer, it was probably about right here. And then things grew really, really well. So then we come to the spring and the soil line had really dropped, maybe to about here. And I had like basically pockets of holes that the soil had kind of sunk down through. And if you remember the way that we layered it, that makes sense. And so I added more garden soil, more compost, and it's dropped down significantly since then. I've seen, especially around the edges, kind of holes that have been created. First, I thought they were animals earlier in the spring, but I'm pretty sure it's just those air pockets. So things have struggled a little bit growing here. I've needed to water this bed a lot more, and we're gonna have to make some adjustments going into next growing season. I'm gonna have to try to get things a little bit more level and hope that they stay level throughout the growing season. For my squash, you can see the difference in the way the leaves are producing and then the actual fruit. So the veggie here kind of has this awkward shape. This is about it for this plant for the season. And unfortunately, my zucchini up front isn't really doing that well. It's not producing much. This was highly productive for probably 3 weeks, almost a month, and now not much of anything. So we'll replant some fall things in those spaces. Everything else along the fence line is doing really well. I say this every couple of videos, but we're getting to the point now where there's a threat of losing some things that are growing, so I want to make sure I come in and do a pretty big harvest. These are just at the beginning when it comes to these peppers, so I'm good here. But some of the other things in the garden, I just need to keep a close eye on. The challenge is when you do those larger harvests, you really need time to be able to work with it. And, you know, time feels like the thing that we never have enough of, right? So I was hoping to get that kind of thing done this weekend, but it looks like it's going to be next weekend instead, which will just have to be fine, right? Before we wrap up for today, and then we'll pick up the rest of this video for tomorrow, I want to update y'all on the planter that we sowed the seeds a week ago now together. So this is the 7-tier leaf planter from Greenstock. So for this, about half of the pockets have germinated. And so this is a mixture of, I think, older seeds that haven't really germinated. So like the scarlet, those seeds actually might be a little bit younger. But the dino kale, we may have to come back in and re-sow those. But the white Russian kale, the premier kale, it's done well. Red boar has poked up. And then I have the blue curl scotch. Some of those have come out and germinated. So we may need to do one more re-sowing. And there's the first sign of the vates. We may need to do one more re-sowing, and then I also will be covering this planter with insect netting. Now remember, this is a place that doesn't have a ton of sun. Right now you can see the sun shining, so this is early morning sun, and then it will be pretty dim for most of the day, and then the sun will come back around on the other side of the houses for the afternoon, which is again okay given what I'm trying to grow here. Okie doke, we'll see you tomorrow. Welcome to day 11. So I'm uber sensitive to creating spaces that are comfortable for myself to move about in, but also that don't create inconveniences for others. And so this sunflower has done something interesting in that it is covering half of the walkway. So I think that's the way these look. These will make for some pretty cut flowers. So I'm going to cut all of these basically and give the walkway back to everyone that comes by here and put them into a vase. So every couple of days I'm coming in to sweep up the sunflower seed shells from, I've been watching, it's mostly looks like the birds that are enjoying them. I do see a few more flowers, just a couple for these bush beans, but I think I'm going to call the time on these two and open up this space. We'll see what we can get growing, although it's pretty shaded, all things considered. I'm going to put on one of my sleeves because these plants are a little prickly. So when I'm talking about amending, I am essentially moving back the leaves, which I'm using as mulch. Those are shredded leaves, and just fluffing a little bit of the soil around the base of the plant. So I'm taking just a small handful of fertilizer. This is a pretty well balanced granular fertilizer, and adding it not exactly onto the stem of the plant, but instead around it. And then I'll come back in with some compost just to kind of top things off. And then I should go to the garage and get some more shredded leaves. So I'll repeat that around each of the plants there. 2 of the smaller variety, and then I can't remember the name of them. I just picked up the seeds from a store. There are 3 of the larger plants. They're Clemson spineless okra. So this is going to be the beginning of okra. First it's going to develop into a flower, and then the actual okra pod itself. This will be the first okra of the season. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, so I'm going to finish off the rest of these plants, and then I'll come back in with some additional mulch and give everything a good watering. I'll do the same thing for the pepper plant here, which is growing to be pretty tall as well. These are smaller peppers. It's a prism, so it ripens to red, a sweet pepper. Welcome to day 12. You know, if there's anything that I have learned and relearned, and I'm going to now apply it to the garden, is short lists are better than long lists. So, big fan of making lists. I think they're valuable, but coming out every day and having the intention to get so many items off of the long list, it's not the thing. So, to that end, we're going to check on tomatoes and potatoes today. Anything else on top of that is gravy. And yeah, let's dig in. So our 20-gallon grow bags, I'm hoping this is just the natural progression of these plants. So I'm hoping that they aren't prematurely dying back. They're a little dry, so we can give these some water. These are more like, I think it's the red potatoes and the purple Viking that I have planted there. So these are the oldest planted potatoes in this bed on either side of the cucumbers. We planted these just over 90 days ago. On this side, they're russets. This is using the root stout method, where you basically put the potatoes directly on top of the soil, and then you add some type of mulch material. In this case, I'm using straw. And so the russet potatoes, I've read, can go as long as like 120 days. So they still have some green on them, which would imply that they're not officially done, but I'm just going to poke around a little bit, you know, curiosity. So the potatoes should be right around the stem. This is the cilantro that I sowed that hasn't germinated yet. It's pretty wet. Now the one thing about this straw is look at that. So pretty small, kind of just sitting there. All right, first potato of the season. I'm gonna cook this up today. The skin is pretty soft. You can see how you had to scratch it away, and that's a part of what we're waiting for. So in a case like that, where the potato is just sitting on the mulch, it's not going to grow anymore. Uber small for a russet, and I'm hoping that there's some in there that have more size on them, but I'm going to poke around just a little bit. So one of the things I want to make sure is that that one's still connected. Found a little bitty baby one. Some larger ones. I got to be real careful to make sure that I'm not exposing the potatoes to sun. And so I'm only digging down a couple of inches and finding them. One could argue that I need a little bit more mulch here. I'm going to rock with what I got. And yeah, a couple more. Small. We'll see. Let me see how I feel about this week. On those couple, I'm going to temper my expectations about like how large of a potato I'm going to be harvesting from this bed. And one could argue that I could go ahead and dig up this space and just move on from them, like harvest whatever size potatoes that are there, because there's still some dying back to do. And again, that skin would be a little bit more tough, ideally, you know. All right, I have empty beds already that I still need to plant in. We will leave these be. This is me coming up with my plan like on the spot. I'll check on them from day to day just to make sure that they're not getting exposed to sun. So right now, I want to make sure that the potatoes don't get eaten away by bugs underneath, that they're not exposed to sun. I actually don't want to add any more mulch to this at this point, given that it's like in its last stages. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. But we have a couple more plantings of potatoes to check on. This is the newest planting of potatoes, just over 3 weeks ago. Since the plant hasn't emerged, I'm thinking the potato rotted. I've actually put 2 seed potatoes in here. So I'm going to dig down here and check. This is a 10-gallon grow bag. I'm just going to remove the straw just to make this a little easier. I'll be able to put it right back if it is growing. So 2 seed potatoes were planted here about 3 weeks ago. This is my second attempt to plant potatoes in this particular grow bag. First time the seed potato rotted, the soil was so heavy. So I made some adjustments and was hoping this would do the trick. These are also seed potatoes that I have been planting out since the spring. So the potato just may not be any good. Not finding any sprouts after digging this far deep is basically telling me what I need to know. And so there's a seed potato. Now it's about digging up the potato. Let's see here. Since it's not growing. Yeah, this is starting to get soft. All right, so we're going to pull these potatoes out. As I look closer, the potato here is mushy and it's going to rot before it produces. Same thing here. It's soft on this end. So gave it a good try to get an extra planting of potatoes, but I don't have any more. Let me think. I can't let go of this, I think. So I think I have some potatoes in the kitchen, in the cabinet, that have sprouted. I'm going to check on that, and if I do, I'm going to drop one more in. So this planting of potatoes is just over 90 days old as well. Same method, the root stout method. I do have more straw as mulch. For these, they are the red potatoes and the purple Viking again. So going back to closer to the stem. Let's see what we have. Super small for the purple Viking. So the red Lesotho, I think it's more like 80 to 100 days for these. And so I could see a small potato here still connected to the mother plant. So we're going to continue to let them do their thing. So I've never had any animals dig up potatoes, but you'd hate to come this far and then lose them. So I'm going to go ahead and find that netting that was originally on this bed and add it back in. So that's our potatoes. We will move on to tomatoes. So a few things to harvest for our tomatoes. We'll get in here and pick those. And then I really want to open up this bed here to see what's happening, especially on those that have the blossom end rot. Well, blossom end rot is tricky, so you think, all right, if it's a pest or insect or disease, there's a way to manage it, and it really doesn't tie to any of those. Oftentimes it's calcium issue, a deficiency in calcium for the plants. And although we first want to think, oh, well, I need to add more calcium to my soil, that just may not be it. Your soil may just be fine. It could just be that the plants are having difficulties taking in that calcium. And in that case, it's often reported that it ties back to watering, so inconsistent watering. So I've had, blossom end rot on tomatoes, peppers, melons. Like, you can't resolve it or reverse it for that particular tomato or pepper, but it doesn't mean that the plant is a loss. This is actually the worst I've seen it, like the most widespread. I've seen it in my tomato plants, so we'll see. We have some decisions to make. There's some tomatoes in here that don't have blossom end rot, but there are a bunch more that do. So what I feel like I need to do is come in here with a heavy hand on pruning so I can get a real good look and see if the plant is even worth salvaging. So like green tomato, this is going to resolve itself. It's going to end up having a rotten bottom. Same thing here. So I'm inclined to just cut out this particular tomato plant. It's not something I normally do. Not certain I'll do that, but that's where I'm leaning towards. And in the meantime, I'll just pick some of these other tomatoes that are doing really well. It's the San Marzano plant down there. Then we have Chocolate Sprinkle, which is a smaller tomato. More like, not quite like a grape tomato almost. So you have some of those. And then I have Dark Star, which is kind of a brownish reddish slicer tomato. Then there's Aroma with some ripe fruit. We'll check those. Those are ready to be picked. We'll see if they have any blossom end rot. And then the San Marzano. And then there is a Volunteer tomato, which I think is the faux brandywine that I've basically accidentally planted, and then it's volunteered, kind of a few times over the years. And I kind of let that go. So there could be the bright side of it. If I pull the San Marzano, that other plant will have more room to grow. Okie doke, so we're going to call this a wrap. Sun just came out bright and strong. We have harvested all the things we're going to harvest today. Quick view of the largest tomato so far this season, which is the pineapple. Appreciate y'all spending some time with me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. If you haven't subscribed already, consider it. There's a button below too. I hope you and your gardens are doing well, and I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one.